to history and culture, like the FGC is where it's at.
I definitely notice a lot more minorities in FGC, or even just console games in general, but FGC in particular, than other esports, communities.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Because we're poor. It comes down to it. It's just like, you think about it, when the fighting game community started, like we started in the arcade.
Sure.
Right? Like we didn't have fancy PCs and consoles. And you can see that it's very evident in the generation gaps.
Mm-hmm.
Take, for example, Street Fighter players and Smash players. All the Smash players, they grew up playing on console because that's what the game was on, right? But everyone played in their at the home when they had the consoles. But like you talk to a lot of FGC players, they couldn't afford consoles, right? Like we literally had to go and chuck quarters into an arcade machine, which may or may not work properly, right? It's just
you don't know.
Yeah, I think that has and that's part of the cultural phenomenon of fighting games is that you have all these people in a melting pot together. You do see a lot of different cultures. You see a lot of different age groups. So right now, like you could say our oldest players are hitting their 40s.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And some of our youngest players are it's 16. John Takeuchi is a good example from Japan. Like he's I think he's 16 or 17.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's like the diversity in the FGC. I think that's one of the most interesting things about the fighting game community.
That's what I love about the fighting game community is they are the most fun, but at the same time they have a history. It's almost the start of esports was in fighting games at the arcades. Like it's one of the first esports to really be around before it was called esports.
Yeah, definitely. And when you talk about it from the business side of things, you talk about you look at Counter-Strike, for example.
Mm-hmm.
How many booms and busts has Counter-Strike been through?
Yeah, really.
I was a big big into Counter-Strike for a long time. I played 1.6. I played from the beta of Counter-Strike when it was still
All right.
And just from an esports side of things, they have multiple generations, but it's very different.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's FGC. It's something that's always been very special to me.
Yeah.
So did you play in the arcades?
I did. So I was actually thinking on the way here, I was like, it's like, when's the first time I really played Street Fighter? And I recall it was in a mall in Mississauga. It's the big Chinese mall in Mississauga. I think the one with the wall with the dragons on it. And it's
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's like Mississauga, Chinatown.
Okay.
And I remember pumping quarters
Kind of like
into
the
that
Mississauga
machine.
version of Pacific Mall.
Yeah, at the time it would have been. That was my first Street Fighter 2 experience. And they had a Street Fighter 2, and there was a lineup to play. So ever since then, it was it was always a thing. Like we would go to close family friends, and they had a Super Nintendo that was imported from Japan.
Ooh.
And he had Street Fighter 2 World Warrior, and we would just play that for hours on end.
Right.
So that's where my beginnings of being in the fighting game community.
I was just thinking about this, how the FGC is probably the most welcoming, and I think just by design, because the whole idea of the FGC and where it started in the arcades, and even when it started to move over to consoles, is you needed another player to play with. So you go to a Dota or a StarCraft or whatever, and you can just kind of matchmake with anybody. So by design, it's kind of a very selfish game. Even though there's a team aspect to it, it's very no, I'm in this to play with just by myself. Versus the FGC, where it's no, if I don't have anybody to play with, then I'm not gonna play.
Yeah, I'm
not gonna get better. I'm not even gonna play.
I don't play Smash in my house.
Exactly.
Ever. I just play with people only when people.
What do you
around.
mean? You don't play online?
I don't have online. I don't have online.
You don't play online? That's the wave now. Is playing online.
Oh yeah.